Welcome to The Call to Rise, the podcast for sacred rebels, visionaries, and conscious changemakers. Here we sit down with the people birthing the new earth, weaving ancient wisdom with modern strategy to build movements that heal, transform, and uplift our world. I'm Mackenzie Darling, your host, inviting you into honest conversations, practical tools, and hard-won wisdom to awaken your power and to inspire you to answer the call to rise and to meet this moment in history. Hello, hello, hello. We have Mary Olivar in the podcast today. Mary, it is so wonderful having you today. Thanks so much for saying yes to this opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I want to read your bio really quick so people can get a background of what you do and your beautiful work in the world. Mary is part songbird, part wise woman, and a tree-hugging earth mama bear. Mary Olivar is a mission-driven leader and community connector dedicated to fostering greater peace and harmony worldwide. She serves as executive director of the Center for Shamanic Education and Exchange, a nonprofit that supports indigenous-directed projects sustaining spiritual traditions and elder wisdom. An ally to indigenous communities, Mary has been a champion for natural and plant medicines and wisdom traditions as enduring sources of healing and the continuation of ancestral ways. Learn more about this work at shamaniceducation.org. Well, I'm obviously so excited to dive into the indigenous wisdom and your work with the Shamanic Education Exchange. But before we kind of go into that, when we started talking a couple weeks ago, you had actually mentioned that your work started at Whole Foods. And I'd love to hear from you. What did you witness about John Mackey's approach to conscious leadership? And what did that look like in a day-to-day workspace working at Whole Foods? And can you talk a little bit about John Mackey for the people that might not realize, the background of him and who he is?
Sure, absolutely. So John Mackey is the founder of Whole Foods Market and was the CEO for many years. I have to say I was not around in the early years of Whole Foods because they predate me a little bit, but I did feel the ripple of it throughout my early career. I started working in natural food stores when I was a teenager and worked for numerous stores, including Erewhon and Earth Fare and Wild Oats, which is a bit old school, and Vitamin Cottage Natural Grocers, among others. So when I moved to Austin in 2008, soon after that, they were launching a healthy eating initiative, which turned into the Healthy Eating Program. So Whole Foods is a huge piece of who and what they are, and what I believe has been foundational to their success is being very true to values, to the core values. And so they did a beautiful job over the years of identifying and articulating these core values, often through reviewing them regularly. What do we believe in? What do we stand for? Who are we? And these values were put up on the walls of every store. When I joined the company, it was a major part of our orientation to learn them and also to reflect on which ones resonated the most with each team member individually. And so not only were they espoused ideologically, but they were also embodied. For each of them, they could point to tangible ways and even programs and focused initiatives on how that was being enacted upon as a value in action in the company. So when I joined, they had recently added a core value about healthy eating and wanting to help promote healthy eating to their employees, to their communities. And so I was a part of what was, I think a big part of John's own personal mission is to change the way America eats. And Whole Foods has certainly done that. But to continue that even further, to educate people around the value of unprocessed whole foods, the value of eating more plants. And so it was a beautiful program to be a part of. I feel really grateful that, my time in corporate America was still mission driven. And it's been, I also really saw the value of values, the importance of identifying and articulating who and what you are. What do you believe in? Why are you doing what you do? and to hold yourself to these things regularly, to use them as a compass for helping to see what is in alignment with opportunities, with the direction that you're taking, with the work that you're doing. So it's been a beautiful tool for myself, just in my own personal life. And yeah, I think John's just did a beautiful job, and it continues with his other projects, but to embody his own values and to encourage others to do the same.
I think that he's really a pioneer in showing us that you can run a corporate organization, but it can also be a movement with a larger purpose and a grander vision. And he talks about that a lot, especially in his book, where the CEO's job is really to showcase the vision and get people so deeply steeped in their purpose and their own purpose. I liked how you just talked about how he asked each individual team member which value aligns with you and why. And so I think that that's a really, really beautiful thing that he did. Any
Yeah.
other cultural or ritual things that happened at Whole Foods that you would want to share?
Yeah, I will say that it wasn't just John. Like John, definitely was a leader in that, but it was something that was, across the company culture at the time. There was also a sense of empowerment of the team members as well, even on the store level. So that really instills trust and it helps people align with their own sense of purpose. And I believe that was a part of what was part of Whole Foods' tremendous success is when you sort of, this is sort of Whole Foods as we're talking, 20 years ago and a little more recently, but you would walk into a store and everybody working there was happy. Like they really were loved the job, loved what they were doing because it had some alignment with their own personal core values, whether it was about environmentalism, whether it was about just basic team member happiness, whether it was about healthy eating or quality standards. These were things that people could resonate with. So it was more than just punching a time clock. It was also being a part of a larger mission and a vision to change the world. So as much as, John was tantamount in starting that, there were many champions throughout the company who were teaching how to do that as well.
Absolutely. I think it was the trickle down effect and building that company culture is just so paramount. Well, I want to segue into your beautiful work with the Shamanic Education Exchange, and I'd love to hear what brought you to this work, and can you tell people a little bit about what you do and what the organization's up to?
Absolutely. The Center for Shamanic Education is a C3 nonprofit that has been around for almost 20 years. So it was founded by Jose and Lena Stevens, who are wonderful spiritual mentors and teachers who had done work with indigenous communities in numerous places, including Peru and Mexico, and saw a need to support the continuation of the spiritual traditions that they were learning and seeing that were alive in those communities. So what we do as an organization is we support indigenous-led projects that perpetuate these spiritual traditions in their own communities. So one way to think about this is, like the shamans of the future, but indigenous shamans of the future. So this work shows up a lot of different ways because they are community-led initiatives. They're specific to the community. So it's a different model than many other mission-driven nonprofits. We're not going into the communities and dictating this is what you should do, or we think you should, here's something that we see as an opportunity for you. Instead, we're bringing in the resources and the support to those communities. So it's a very feminine model, actually, where we're receiving and supporting rather than, going in or taking out. So it's a different. It works really beautifully. It's focused on that empowerment of and also with the respect of the sovereignty of those communities. And I've really, felt into this particular work. It's I first started working with the board about 5 years ago, and then I've been in the executive director position for about 2 years. And it's deeply aligned with my own purpose work and my own values. And beyond that, it's something that I truly believe in. And so I've spent some time thinking about why is this important? And I think, there's many noble reasons that we could talk about why this is important. I mean, one being just to be in reciprocity. Like I certainly value and have learned from indigenous wisdoms, and I see them as important leaders for us globally with what they're holding. But it goes deeper than that. And we could also certainly look at wanting to perhaps put forward a motion to balance the wrongs of history, of colonialism, and other things that have been perpetrated against these communities. So also a noble reason. But fundamentally, I think it's much more important than either of those things. If you, so as I've sat with this, I invite you to, indulge me in a metaphor. Picture our collective human family tree of all people, of all times. So vast branches and leaves and big strong limbs. So that tree has a taproot that comes out of the trunk, and the root system is vast, but this original taproot that's still alive is connected to the origins of humanity, the seed of all of humanity, where we all come from. And there's a lot of work in our modern world around remembrance and reconnection and wanting to pull from the past, and how do we do this, and where we go looking in different places. But there are communities who are still holding that original conversation, that are in continuous connection with that seed, and as such with the planet. And so what we're doing as an organization is we are putting energy and resources and nourishment into the taproot of our collective human family tree. And that is something that benefits all of humanity. And I believe if we ever enter a time where we have completely lost those conversations, where that connection has been severed, that will be a detriment to all of humanity. So while our work can seem simple, it's profound.
Before we go any further, I want to speak directly to the revolutionaries that are listening. The ones who know that their lives carry a deeper purpose of service in this moment. If you can feel that you weren't meant to simply succeed inside the old systems, but to help reshape what comes next, this invitation is for you. I've created the Movement Maker Archetype Quiz, a powerful tool that reveals one of 7 leadership archetypes emerging right now to guide us. I think it's so profound, and I think it's so beautiful how you just walked us through that tapestry of the origin of where we come from. Thank you so much. That's beautiful. Can you walk us through just a little bit more on that taproot, and why is it so important that we remember? Why is that the movement, I think, of our time? I mean, I think it's returning to the sacred and returning to our remembrance. Why does that really matter?
Well, I believe that we all come from shamanically practicing people. And I know the word shamanic, particularly in the last few years, has a lot of different connotations, a lot of different meanings. But when in the simplest...
Hey, Mary, really quickly, can you put a definition to shamanism?
When I say it in its simplest form, what is nature-based spirituality? So pretty simple to acknowledge the spirit in the world of nature. So fundamental in this idea of nature-based spirituality is the idea of animism. And so I also believe we all come from people who were animistically practicing. So animism, coming from the word anima, from spirit or soul, recognizes that there is soul, there is life, there is spirit in everything around us. And not just the animals, but also in the plants. But not just in the plants, but also in the waters and the places and the sun and the wind and fire itself and the air. And so it really brightens up the world. And you can, I have a practice every day of the first time I see the sun, I say, hello. Oh, and I take a moment and connect with the sun, and I think about, thank you for being the leader of our solar system. Thank you for the source of energy. Everything I eat is fueled by the sun, one way or the other. So just to stop and acknowledge that, and for me, it brightens my day. It expands my sense of possibilities. It helps connect me with this big, strong power of fire in the sky that illuminates our world and teaches us about cycles and so much else. So starting to open up oneself to connecting to the natural world, to being in relationship with the natural world, to thank the natural world is immensely gratifying. And it's something that I believe we have a natural tendency to do. So often when I talk about the work we do and I talk about animism, people will later either share with me privately or share happily with the group, like, I do that. I say hello to the bird that comes, or there's a tree I love to hug, or there's a space I love to go visit on my hike. And so we already have an innate human tendency to be in an animistic way of life, to honor and see the world around us. But I believe we've just sort of forgotten, we've just shifted out of it as we become, more linear, more didactic. We kind of forget to acknowledge the animism around us, but we are still doing it. There's a little plant you say hello to, or you do this or that, or, you notice the hawk, you notice the world around you. And so not only is it just the noticing and saying hello, but there's a deeper listening that can start to happen too. So one practice, for example, is, animals are an easy one to sort of start to notice, wild animals in particular, is to observe, when does the fox show up? Or when does the vulture fly overhead? Like, what were you thinking about? What is that message that's being brought to you in that moment? And to start to be curious and in conversation, starting with listening, starting with acknowledgement and saying hello and just greeting like you would in any kind of polite situation with any other being. So it's really something that not only brightens and enriches our experience of life, but it also allows us to be in the natural state of who and what we truly are as humans, as earthlings, as part of this beautiful world.
I think so often we forget that we're nature. We're part of all of this. This is our larger family. And I think that part of this isolation that we're feeling, this pandemic of depression and not belonging, is not belonging to one another, but also not belonging to Earth, right? To the animals, to the sun. I love your morning practice of saying hello to the sun. I may be stealing that. That's
So
beautiful.
easy.
It's so easy, but it's such a great
For sure.
reminder.
No stealing. It's free. Or even just, if you're taking a shower, if you're, even getting a drink of water, just that moment of like, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, thank you. Oh my gosh. And it's, we talk, there's different practices, to help with that as an antidote for some of that loneliness, some of that disconnection, depression. And, gratitude practices is one of them. And it's so easy just to water is one of my favorite ways to be in gratitude. I mean, if you look at the scope of human history, the scope of human experience, to have clean water that we can drink, available so readily, and even to take it up a notch, to have hot water that comes out of the tap that I didn't have to carry or chop wood for, or do, these are ways where you can just be like, oh my gosh, hot water, wow. And just sort
Mhm.
of be in the moment of witnessing authentically, truly. And the more you start to do it, the easier it becomes.
We do have so much to be grateful for. That's a wonderful reminder for sure. This remembering is so incredibly important as we bring this back to movement making. What ancient wisdom has to teach us about living in modern times is that appreciation to nature, and that we can't overconsume, we can't take too much. It has to be a reciprocal and a balanced relationship. And so can you talk a little bit about that in terms of climate change and where we're at, and what indigenous people want to tell the movement makers of our time?
Yeah. That's a big topic.
No pressure.
And I don't want to try to speak for any indigenous people or speak for
Mhm.
anyone else at all. I will also mention though, if we look at even just the carbon sequestration that's happening in the planet, like where the carbon that is in the world, where it is being held, in forests and land mass, which is a tremendous place where it's located. And I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but the majority of the percentage of that land mass is protected by indigenous people who are actively defending that land, often from logging, from mining, from agriculture, from other encroachment. So it's not just a theory. We all owe a debt of gratitude to indigenous people right now for physically defending, often with their lives, the parts of the earth that are holding biodiversity, that are holding carbon, and that are still holding this very, very special diversity in life forms. So it's beyond just even telling. This is something that we can look at. What are they doing? What are they doing with their lives? And, but a common thread I will share that I do hear from the communities that we work with is just to be in acknowledgement, to be in remembrance. I mean, you hear the phrase like the name, which originally comes from the Andes, Pachamama, our dear mother, and to acknowledge the mother with gratitude. And it can be with an offering, and an offering can be just a word of gratitude. It could be flowers, it could be a prayer, it could be a song, but to take the time to even just start being in the energetics of gratitude, and that will ripple through into the actions. And of course, there's many, many actions that can be taken. Jane Goodall recently passed, so I've been seeing some of her beautiful words. And one of the things she really encourages, so I'll borrow this from her, is to do things locally, to start seeing where you can tend to the earth in the better ways. Where I live in Austin, we have the land here is aquifers. There's a lot of limestone, so the rain will filter down to these underwater systems that feed springs that are incredible but fragile ecosystems. And we face a lot of challenges in preserving these systems with impermeable cover. So for development, but also with many straws being stuck into those aquifers from many locations. So there's constant threats, constant motions and petitions from people who are trying to push back and protect those beautiful areas that bring springs and cold water into the land and enrich the quality of life for everybody, not just for those particular ecosystems. So starting to tune in to other local communities, maybe it's even just keeping sewage out of water, things that sound relatively common sense that we still need to stand up for and request. Maybe it's also about, we have ordinances here in Austin too around trees of a certain diameter not being able to be cut. If you live in a place that's not happening, maybe that's an easy way to start to protect some of the big brothers that bring us shade. So there's ways we can start once we feel activated, but the first thing is just starting with the acknowledgement, the awareness, the thank you, and even just putting your hand on a tree can really start that.
I'm wondering for people out there, like even myself, I would love to get more involved with Indigenous communities and be an ally and work with them and help amplify their voices more. And so I'm wondering how to be in right relationship where that doesn't feel extractive. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So the first part is, as I'm always learning and always reminding myself, is to be a good listener. Also, to locally is a beautiful way to start. Are there gatherings that are open near you? I just went to a really beautiful powwow called the Sacred Springs Powwow that happens every year in San Marcos, Texas. And so a little bit out of where I live. And just to be there and to witness the traditions, to witness the beauty and the dancing, and to talk to people there and make friends, and perhaps see if there's local organizations that have open prayer ceremonies, open pieces where they're sharing and interested. So there's some people are interested and happy to educate others. Other people perhaps are wishing to hold their own ways closer to themselves. But curiosity and good listening. And then, of course, for anyone who is in a position of amplifying voices to, check yourself and see what kind of voices am I amplifying? Are there others who may wish to connect and tell their story, and to, be straightforward and be kind as we would in any good relationship? And, one other thing, if you're even more in a position of, conferences or gatherings and wanting to have voices, to also recognize that there have been economic disparities in certain communities. And if you wish for more diverse voices to be representative, it's also really good to have travel stipends specifically for those populations and those demographics to make sure that the representation is showing up and is available to be there.
Every episode of the Call to Rise podcast is about the changemakers and movements reshaping our world. But the podcast is just the beginning. On my Substack, I open the door wider, sharing my personal journey with movement makers, the wins, the struggles, and the behind the scenes rituals that help leaders birth what's next. If you're ready to go deeper into the frameworks and practices you hear me hint at here, join me at globalmovementmaker.substack.com. I think part of your Shamanic Education Exchange is you're bringing these diverse voices together, aren't you? You're kind of creating like a mycelial network of different indigenous cultures and having them speak with one another and learn from one another. Is that right?
Well, it's something that's part of our mission statement to also support the exchange between Indigenous people, recognizing that these shamanic traditions, these spiritual traditions, have always been in a place of evolution where we're connecting and sharing, similar to we do in many, many ways and formats across different sectors and industries and aspects of life. So we've had a little bit of things slow down a little bit with COVID, but that was something that has been part of our work in the past to support the travel of an Indigenous shaman from one community to another. And it's not something where we are following them around or documenting, but just to allow for them to spend that time together and be in that exchange. Right now, we're looking at a couple of different opportunities to continue that. And these would be more gatherings of different Indigenous leaders and spiritual leaders and shaman for them to be able to have that space of exchange. So we really support projects that we want to make sure that they're Indigenous-led. So again, we're not going in and saying, hey, we think you should travel here. I mean, it might be part of the natural conversation, but we also are looking the projects that we support. We really want to make sure that they're benefiting Indigenous people and benefiting an Indigenous communities. So that's another piece that we're like, how would this work? So we haven't orchestrated any traveler gatherings recently. We're open to supporting other Indigenous communities who are creating such. And like I said, I've got several of those prospects that we're in conversation with right now.
I'm so curious. Can you tell us a little bit about one of your favorite projects that you've done?
It's like hard to choose.
I bet. I bet.
There's a couple of them that I'll mention. I'd love to mention three if possible.
You are allowed.
Yeah, that I feel proud of. So one of them is relatively high profile that we were a part of. And so we have a long-standing relationship with the Wixárika Huichol people of Mexico. They're holding the oldest peyote lineage, and they are people very much of pilgrimage. So there's many sacred sites that are dear to them that are part of their pilgrimage routes and destinations. And there's some of those sites, particularly Wirikuta, the peyote gardens in central Mexico, have been under a lot of threats just because it's a fragile ecosystem and because of agriculture and mining specifically. So there's been a movement to designate both their pilgrimage sites and Wirikuta as UNESCO World Heritage Sites to give them that status. And so we were not leading that movement, but the part of it that we supported via our funding was the travel and the inclusion of the Wixárika Maracames. Those are their shaman and their leaders to participate in that conversation with UNESCO, with the UN-run organization. So they actually got just this summer, so July 2025, were granted UNESCO World Heritage Site status. I was also happy to see it shouted out on the President of Mexico's socials, and so it's something that got a lot of attention. And there is the question of what happens next, but it's a step into bringing some level of protection to those lands. I'm also very proud of a project we did with the Kogi or Kagaba people of northern Colombia. They're holding an extremely ancient lineage in the area where they are. They're operating in a place that's the highest coastal mountain range in the world. So it has a lot of different microclimates that are happening in that area. They were able to see climate change happening very early on. I could go on about the mysticism that they hold and the way that they operate, but we did a specific project where we supported an internal census where they went around to the different villages in their area to identify the sanhas, the holy women that were holding the teachings and the mysticism specific to the female body. And they brought them all together. They call where they live the heart of the world. So they had a women's gathering, a holy women's gathering in the heart of the world, to talk to them and let them know that the work that they were doing is important, to ensure that they had apprentices and were perpetuating this work and continuing the knowledge that they had, continuing it to keep it alive, and also to ask them what they need and how, how kind of support. So that was something I was very honored to do. We're exploring doing more projects with them. There's an organization called The Fountain that's doing very good work with the Kogi Kagaba people as well. And so, yeah, looking forward to more partnerships there. And then we also have an ongoing project we have one with the Shipibo Kanibo community in the Ucayali River Basin in Peru, which is a feeder for the Amazon. And we just started another project with another Shipibo community. Both of these projects are very focused on experiential learning for the youth. So there's a process called a diet or a dieta or a sama, where they're doing this is a very traditional way of communing with a plant, very restricted diet, and where you're drinking this plant tea and in deep meditation and contemplation with that vibration. And there's, as you might imagine, many, many plants in the jungle, and they all have different qualities, different medicines, they would say. And so this is a chance as an individual to learn the medicine of the plant and also bring it into sort of your own personal library of what plants you can know as a healer. So this is an old way that we are supporting the youth to continue to do more intensive study with the Onanya, the shaman of their community. And it's really been beautiful to witness in the youth, especially in the young men, the way it empowers them. And you see a new level of pride in who they are and what they come from and what they're holding, and also a deepening into the connection of their home, of the land that they are in. But yeah, we've also had new projects this year with the Hunicui in Brazil, with the Siona in Colombia, and more to come there too.
What an incredible job you have.
I really
Yeah,
like
I
it.
am just so envious as I'm sitting back and listening to you. So do you get to travel to all of these places?
Oh, I
You, oh, you
don't.
don't. Okay.
We're not boots on the ground. So the
Okay.
money that we raise is going predominantly, as much as we can into, with little overhead as we can manage, going into those communities to fund those indigenous-led projects. So I get invitations to come visit, but that would be, if I do that, that would be on my own personal time, because we're very, very true for what our mission is. Our mission is not to send me on a beautiful vacation to visit
Right.
these communities. Our mission is to support those communities. So we do. Sometimes it depends on the community and their level of modernization on whether or not who I might be talking to in the community. Often we're working with what I call a bridge person, someone who is supporting, doing what we need to here, making sure that there's a place to send money. Like that's another, international wire transfers to indigenous communities isn't the most easy thing to do. There's no Cash App, there's no Venmo. So how are we helping communities, supporting communities, and being able to access these funds in a way where they also get to go to the intended projects of perpetuating the spiritual tradition. So that said, I have traveled to Peru. I have traveled to Brazil. Look forward to more adventures. I have traveled to Mexico as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, for organizations that would want to give back or donate to indigenous communities. Obviously, your organization would be great to donate to.
Too, yeah.
You have a lot of background in fundraising, and so I know a lot of my listeners, fundraising is always a thing. And so can you talk a little bit about the fundraising process, and what are some of your greatest lessons that you've learned around fundraising that you want to share?
I'm still learning all the time. Yeah, so I'll share a little bit specifically about some of the ways that we fundraise that have been successful for us. The bread and butter of this nonprofit, for almost 20 years has been individual gifts, and even small donations coming from even $10 a month, $25 a month. To know that that's coming in is extremely helpful for us when a project shows up and we can say, yeah, we can support this because we know that is happening. I also, and this is something where I invite in collaborators, if any of your listeners feels resonant with them. So I'm also an advisor for South by Southwest, meaning I support grading submissions in a variety of tracks and topics, including, culture, activism, plant medicines, and health and med tech, things in that, because that's my background as well. So I throw a large unofficial South by Southwest party, which is during that time, where we collaborate with a variety of brands, often focused in the wellness space, in some kind of, or like in a novel therapy or, novel plant medicine therapies that are happening. So that's something that has been a real success for us. And a lot of that, I really, I'm grateful to my community here in Austin too, because I build community relationships and show up and support others how I can. And then that's when I ask for help, is for this big, beautiful fundraiser. It's become known as the best party during South by Southwest. It's a raging alcohol-free art party is how I like to describe it. This year in 2026, we'll also have a second day of sessions and talks and panels and such. I'm looking forward for that. I'm also always open to collaborators for this event, whether they're artists or brands or other collaborators. It's something that we'd love to weave together. So leaning on community has been a big one. I also do smaller community events too. Like there's a swimming hole here that is delightful that you can rent out, and it's a public space that is also available sometimes. So I'll rent that out and use that as a fundraiser. So doing things that are fun in community so people start to know this. We also do, a lot of our fundraising happens through art sales, art from some of the communities that are making this art. So this is another way that we're bringing funds and resources into the communities. We're working with artisans there. These are all communities that we already have projects with, that we've already, are in a relationship with. So the artisans are paid a fair price for their work. They're compensated fairly, and then we sell the work and the proceeds go back into projects in those communities. So I have an art show up now in Austin, an exhibit that will run through the month. And so that's another way that I'm engaging with community and using the visual storytelling for that. It's partially just like working with what you got and showing up and sharing and being in your own truth about it and being in your own values again.
Are these earrings that you're wearing, is that part of?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and your bracelet too.
Yep.
So beautiful. Beautiful.
Frequently adorned, and I carry the communities with me, so it's something that helps me be in awareness. They're also in my prayers all the time. But yeah, both the earrings and the bracelet are Huixartica Huichol, so from Mexico. And they do beautiful beadwork, and just that's the other piece about the art shows. It's a delight to share these, handmade pieces that are made with a lot of love and intention and prayers and symbolism and sacred geometry and allies, whether it's a flower or a hummingbird or a jaguar or plants, medicines, like they're all coming in. So I love sharing both the visual of it, but also for people to take it home when that happens is a delight to bless them in that way.
I absolutely agree. When I've gone to similar places, I've gone into the Amazon and, just seeing the artwork of the Shipibo people is just, breathtaking. And the paintings from their ayahuasca
Yep.
experiences are just otherworldly. It's just absolutely amazing. And I've gone on your website and beautiful artwork there. So for all my listeners, I highly recommend you go to this website and check out the beautiful artistry there. You mentioned, around your fundraising events, these, you host like the best party of South by Southwest, which that is saying a lot because South by Southwest is, speaking of otherworldly, amazing. What would you say are the key ingredients for creating the best party? Because part of movements, right, are gatherings. You want to have meaningful gatherings. I want to take a moment to invite you into something special called Alchemy, a 3-month one-on-one coaching journey for people who feel called to step into deeper servant leadership. In Alchemy, we weave together the insights of the Enneagram with the sacred container of plant medicine ceremonies so you can understand your patterns, release what no longer serves you, and rise as the leader that you're meant to be. If you've been feeling the pull to step into your gifts and serve from a place of clarity and integrity, I'd love to walk with you. You can learn more and apply at globalmovementmaker.com/alchemy.
Like, prayer, stamina.
Right? Yeah.
With these events, one, again, just I'm so grateful for community. I'm so grateful for people who recognize the power of this work and have said yes and showed up often without pay and just volunteered themselves. So that's been something I'm just cannot be grateful enough for. I also show, what I like to tell people whenever we're exploring any kind of collaboration or partnership is, that, and this is not just what I tell people, is, what I hold is I want every person who has anything to do with this event to feel good about it, to feel good about it when it's done. I want the exchange to feel good. And even if you're just a ticket buyer and showing up, if you're a volunteer on a smaller level, if you're our top sponsor, I want the exchange to feel great. So that's just an intention that I'm holding. I also, when I'm in these collaborations, and I feel the same way about the art pieces, like I'm not selling anything. Like, this is what I have. What do you want? What are you looking for? And is there a place that we match? And if great, wonderful, but just to sort of be in trust, that's like, this is what I got, what do you got? Like, just sort of comparing and seeing where if there is a good synergy there. And yeah, just to reiterate that, I'm always very interested in, like, what are your goals for this? What are you trying to do? And sometimes it's something where I'm like, I don't know if this is the best use of your time or money, or, if it's genuinely not a good fit, I'm not going to try to make it fit. I might try to introduce them to someone else who is a good fit. So just to be, show up as someone who is, I'm in my own personal prayer of wanting to embody my values and wanting to be more kind and wanting to create more peace and harmony in the world. And I'm learning how to better do that all the time. I'm not perfect, but it's something that is, part of my daily prayer of, like, being a vessel for those energies to come through, to be a vessel for my values to be expressed. So I think that's something to be really helpful, is to stay in the prayer rather than the goal. Like, and the goal can be part of the prayer, but if we start to fixate on the achievement, on the thing that's supposed to happen, it can be easy to lose the thing that is, to lose our why. So that's a big piece there. It's just to do whatever practices you need to stay authentic to your own prayer, to your own purpose.
I think that that's so important, because if we get too stuck in our goals, then we're looking so much for perfection, and we're not actually communing with the prayer and allowing ourselves some grace, because we can't hold those values all the time, but we can
Yeah.
certainly aspire to them, right?
Yeah. You also reminded me, when you said perfection, that was a little mantra I had for one of our events where I was just like, progress, not perfection. Or
Yeah.
else, or the other, and one day of, it's like production, not perfection. Like, to not be
Mm.
like, oh, we could have, I'm like, nope, you just get her done with a big event. So
200 years from now, what is the legacy that Shamanic Education Exchange will have left?
I'd love to see those roots of our collective human family tree be, filled with vitality, to be expanded, and to support, a thriving system of humanity. I'd love to see these communities that we have worked with, that we are working with, that we're going to work with, to be thriving in a way that is determined by their own values and their own ideology and belief system, not the values that might be shining today in our world. I'd love to see those who walk closely to the earth, who listen to the earth and speak to her, to be held up as the leaders that they are across our world, and for the ways and the wisdoms that they're holding to bring us into, to have brought us into a new paradigm that will be one of harmony and deep connection and peace for everybody.
Amen to that. May it be so.
Oh,
And are there any other words of wisdom for the movement makers who are here to help shift that new paradigm right now? What are the prayers that you wish to whisper to them?
part of me is like, nothing like a good altar cloth to help you on your way.
Hey, doesn't hurt. You're speaking my language.
Hey, they're beautiful blessings. I'm gonna feel into that one.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, to remember that they would not be assigned a purpose and not given the vehicle to do it, the tools that they need to do it, and to remember to ask for help and support, both on our physical plane, but also in the energetic plane. that prayers are powerful, and to be in your prayer and the small prayers, the big prayers, that's a powerful thing of helping you feel resourced and supported and loved and aligned. And so I just really wish them clear, beautiful prayers coming from their heart, aligned with their thoughts and filling their path ahead.
Well, I hope all of you took that beautiful, beautiful prayer in. And thank you so much, Mary, for sharing your wisdom and sharing your heart. Most of all, I could really feel it throughout the whole session. So what are ways for people to get involved with you?
We'd love to invite people to come visit us at Shamanic Education. We have, as you mentioned, a beautiful store with pieces typically from the Shipibo Kanibo communities we work, beautiful woven song cloths that are holding a lot of blessings and prayer. We also have pieces from the Wisharika Wichal community. I have some beautiful bags that were also gifted to us by the Kogi Kagaba people. As I like to say, they have never been touched by a machine or money. So they're powerful, powerful thing from the heart of the world. And if there's ever something you're looking for that I'm mentioning that is you don't see on our website, often we've got things down because we've got them in art exhibits. So you're welcome to reach out. We also love donations. We're a 501c3. That means a lot to us. A little bit goes a long way. We fund our projects typically for less than $10,000. So it's, even a $10 a month gift, a $20 a month gift is tremendously supportive to us. And for folks who are in Austin, fun party coming up, they're welcome to reach out as well. And I also do regular exhibits. I know we've got an exhibit coming up in early 2026 in San Diego and other places, perhaps to be continued. So, come and witness the art in person and just stay in touch. One more thing to that too, we're also, are in our own prayer of supporting Indigenous communities. So if there's an Indigenous community that you feel like that you're connected with, that you feel like would be a good fit for the kind of projects I've described, we're happy to have those conversations as well. We're not just about receiving more than anything. We are about giving. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to double click on that. I think that I'm really, really impressed with your organization, and it sounds like a wonderful place for people to donate. I really commend you for listening to the communities and having them lead of what they need. That's not done enough. And so I really commend what you're doing, and any way that I can support you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Mackenzie. I really appreciate the opportunity to share.
Thank you for listening to The Call to Rise. If today's conversation stirred something in you, subscribe and share it with a fellow movement maker. And join our community at globalmovementmaker.com. Till next time, keep leading with courage, keep weaving ancient wisdom with modern strategy, and always remember to answer the call.